after that episode, right, I woke up and was in the pediatric ICU, Columbia Medical Center, and it was honestly kind of comforting. I to this day, this probably sounds maybe weird, but I sort of like being in hospitals.
Okay.
I don't get to do it very often nowadays, but I've always kind of had fond and almost nostalgic, feelings towards hospitals. And
well, I mean, it sounds like you spent a large portion of your childhood there, so it doesn't. It's hard for me to imagine, but it doesn't not make any sense at all.
Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, and I think a lot, for me personally, I guess, on the luckier side, it happened to be between the medical professionals that, were helping me along the way, and, family and everything. It was always a very supportive environment.
Yeah.
Where, we got to play video games I didn't have at home even. And,
yeah, children's hospitals are very different than grown-up hospitals.
That's true. That's a good point.
Hey there, and welcome to In Sickness and in Health, a podcast about chronic illness, disability, medical traumas, and everyday uncomfortable healthcare experiences. My name is Cara Gale. I'm not a doctor or a medical professional. I'm just a person and a patient who really wants to talk about this stuff more. Nothing said on this show should ever be considered medical advice. If you're experiencing a medical issue, please seek qualified medical help. I know the system sucks, but I wish you a lot of luck. Every person is different, even within disease groups, so none of my guests should ever be regarded as official representatives or spokespersons for their conditions. Please respect their very personal choices, and unless they ask for it, please don't make suggestions about treatments or lifestyle changes. Unsolicited medical advice is never not annoying. In today's episode, Alex talks about his experience with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, having heart surgery at the age of 16, almost dying a couple times, his work in assisted living, and my favorite topic, death in our death-phobic culture. In the bonus episode, he answers my big healthcare question, and we talk all about my arrhythmias and my heart-shaped mystery box. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, or HCM, occurs if heart muscle cells enlarge and cause the walls of the ventricles to thicken. The ventricles are those two larger lower chambers of the heart. This thickening can interfere with how the blood pumps out of the heart to the rest of the body, and changes in those muscle cells can lead to arrhythmias that affect heart rhythm. As always, I've included links to learn more about some of the things we talk about in this episode in the show notes. There you'll find links to Alex's music projects and his email if you have any questions for him. I might be switching to an every other week release schedule. I haven't fully decided yet, but producing weekly episodes is a little bit too much work for my energy levels. But I'm going to keep trying. We'll see how it goes. I'll keep you posted. Find us at insicknesspod.com and on social media at insicknesspod. If you can, take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, which helps other people find the show. And I hope you enjoy this episode.
They noticed I had a little bit of an arrhythmia. It wasn't a very prominent one, and it wasn't really causing me any discomfort or any other issues, but it was definitely noticeable. I had a little bit of a heart murmur too, and so they just kind of watched it, and sure enough, as I got older, the thickening became present, and it kept getting larger as I grew, basically. And so when I was 16, I had open heart surgery to
Did they go through the front of your chest, or did they go through your back?
Yes, they went through the front.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have a big zipper scar?
I do. It's actually not that bad though, the scar. Apparently when they stitched me up, they used what was at the time a newer almost plastic surgery developed technique to stitch it up. So, well, it was just a pretty clean.
Yeah. So what does that surgery entail? Because when I read your description of it, my brain thought of it like those monsters who scoop out bagels, you know? And then I thought a little bit more about it, like a little bit more about cardiac anatomy. I was like, no, that can't be what they did. So what do they do with that surgery?
Right. Well, it's so there's some, honestly, although it's not literally that, there is some similarity to that. They so the first they cut open the chest. For anyone who's never actually thought about open heart surgery before, if they go in through the front, they literally take a saw and saw through your sternum, and then they, pry open your rib cage through the hole there, and that gives access to the heart. And then from there, I had what's called a myectomy. So that is actually involves the cutting out of heart muscle. Mm-hmm. So even though it wasn't really scooped, it was more kind of like shaved.
Okay.
Out. And then, so that's what I had. There's another procedure for it called alcohol septal ablation, where they inject straight alcohol into the to kind of kill the tissue.
That's really interesting. I had a radio frequency catheter ablation where they use I don't think it's actually a laser, but I like to think of it as a laser.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Where they tried to get rid of an arrhythmia that I had.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, it didn't go so well. I
Yikes,
had it done twice, but
whoa, oh my
God. But this is about you.
Whoa.
So what were those first symptoms that you had?
They were some of the textbook HCM symptoms: shortness of breath, occasional dizziness, getting kind of tired easily, and so those were the main things, and those pretty much were the only things that I had. They just kind of, those were the symptoms that I had the whole time, and they did get a little bit worse. I noticed. I was on medication. I've pretty much always been on medication. I don't know that I've ever not been on medicine, at least since I've been conscious.
Is that a beta blocker? Or
exactly. Yeah. Yep. A beta blocker. When I was younger, I think there was a type 2 that they were giving me along with the beta blocker, but now it's just one beta blocker. That helped a lot, right, with my symptoms. But if I, missed a dose or I was late taking a dose, I would feel it pretty quickly, within an hour or two of not taking it. I would start to feel that shortness of breath, and as soon as I stood up from doing anything, I'd be like, oh my God.
I know all about that down. One.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well,
yeah.
There we go. Yeah. That was something.
But you had some scary episodes.
Yeah, that's right.
Tell me about those.
Okay, so I guess the first one was I actually had an appointment with my cardiologist this one day, and he was in Columbia Medical Center over in New York. So it started out pretty normal. It was a totally normal day. Going to my appointment, I was in the back seat of my parents' car, and we were on the bridge, or very close to the bridge, and suddenly I remembered my heart started racing, felt like it was racing, and I got it was really hard to breathe. I guess I said something to my parents, and so whatever. This part of it is a little bit kind of foggy, but so basically I was sort of in and out of consciousness between then and waking up a few hours later, which I'll get to. But, so yeah, there was, I heard all, it was yelling, and, my parents were clearly, kind of emotional, and, in my memory, I think we were, at one point, pulled over, but my dad, yelled to the cop, what was happening, and then he ended up giving us, an escort or something like that. I remembered, seeing, lights at one point, and, I mean, that was probably after I got to the hospital, now I think about it, but anyway, we get to the hospital, and I guess, they did whatever they had to do, and I'm still here.
And was that when you were 16, or was that?
No, that was when I think I was about 8 at this time. Yeah, so this was earlier. And what had happened was I had an episode of cardiogenic shock.
So your body kind of goes into shock as if you were bleeding out, but it's because your heart isn't pumping the way that it's supposed to, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And that's what happened, and that's why I was kind of like losing consciousness and all that. So, and it's a pretty like serious thing. I found out. I didn't find out until like a lot later in life, like probably 10 years ago, when I'm 28 now. But yeah, apparently most people who enter that don't come out of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because you need medical intervention like pretty quickly, or else the blood's not getting to your brain, and like all sorts of things can happen.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was it's just a, one of those weird fluke things, whatever that we happen to be already heading towards a medical facility, I guess.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. So then I woke up in ICU, and I think that was my first time in a hospital for myself. Mm-hmm. I did have a sister who was in hospitals for back and forth several times, 2 earlier than that. Okay, so I had a sister who died when she was 5.
I'm sorry.
And, well, thank you. But it was, I was 7. This was probably like just over a year prior to the story I just shared.
Wow.
So, yeah. She had cancer.
Okay.
It was rhabdomyosarcoma.
So a muscle thing?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, in her abdomen,
Wow.
the abdominal wall. And so there was a lot of time spent in hospital playrooms for me growing up, mostly for that, because my family were Hackensack Medical Center specifically a lot. And
so you said your mom's a nurse.
yeah.
But, to lose one child and then, like, a year later have another child with a
Almost
severe, medical emergency, like, wow.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Have you talked to your parents much about, like, what that experience was like for them?
Well, I have. We haven't honestly gotten haven't dwelled on it a whole lot, to be honest. I feel like that's partially like their own, way of like dealing with it, kind of. It's just like it was such like an extremely intense time that
Just pretend like it didn't happen.
almost, yeah, kind of like that. They've definitely been like totally forthcoming with things whenever I've asked them, but a lot of it is, frankly, a more like surface level things, like literally factually what happened, and and then they'll say that it was hard on them, and it will usually gets a little bit emotional, mm-hmm. But honestly, and I've just been thinking about this personally in my own life, the like actually exploring the whole like emotions that they were feeling hasn't been something that's been that I've really discussed too deeply with them, at least. But I definitely can for sure. Well, I probably actually can't really for sure at all imagine what that time was like for them.
Yeah.
Just that it was probably really, really hard.
Yeah. I can't imagine either. Wow.
But yeah, so I after that episode, I woke up and was in the pediatric ICU, Columbia Medical Center, and it was honestly kind of comforting. I to this day, this probably sounds maybe weird, but I sort of like being in hospitals.
Okay.
I don't get to do it very often nowadays, but I've always kind of had fond and almost nostalgic, feelings towards hospitals. And
well, it sounds like you spent a large portion of your childhood there, so it doesn't. It's hard for me to imagine, but it doesn't not make any sense at all.
Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, and I think a lot, for me personally, I guess, on the luckier side, it happened to be between the medical professionals that, were helping me along the way, and, family and everything. It was always a very supportive environment.
Yeah.
Where, we got to play video games I didn't have at home even. And,
yeah, children's hospitals are very different than grown-up hospitals.
That's true. That's a good point. That's a very good point. But yeah, so that was the first time I almost died. And then there was a second time, too. I was 16. It was very shortly after my open heart surgery. And what happened was, so there's a pericardial sac that surrounds the heart,
It's
like a
kind of
little
like
membrane
a plastic
thing.
baggie.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. And naturally, there is like a little bit of fluid around there to, surrounds the heart, kind of helps protect it, and just that kind of thing. And it's apparently not a super uncommon side effect of or after thing that can sometimes happen with open heart surgery. But when they close it back up, sometimes as the body, like, I guess, starts to regenerate or whatever, produce that fluid or whatever, that more fluid keeps being produced and like too much of it. So my body was like, there was too much fluid in my heart, around my heart.
Which can interfere with how it beats.
Exactly right. So that's exactly what happened. I woke up one morning after coming back home. I had my surgery, by the way, at the Mayo Clinic out in Minnesota. There was a cardiac surgeon out there who specifically specializes in cardiac myectomies. So we went to him. Something I didn't mention before, but while overwhelmingly the obstruction is in the right ventricle, mine, of course, was in the left side as well. So it was a little bit definitely less common, and just added
complication.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why we went to such a. I guess my family went to such an extent to, go all the way out there and go to this one particular guy who this was like his main thing. Anyway, got home. This fluid like built up around my heart, and I woke up. I felt a little like tired, a little unusual. So I told my mom, and she said, "Okay, let's, go bring you out to the cardiologist to get me checked out." And so that's what we did. And as the morning, like, when by morning I mean like less than an hour window progressed, I was like finding it harder and harder to breathe, and like felt like my heart was beating faster and faster. And so my mom like drove me there. When we first started, it wasn't like an emergency situation. It was just like kind of unusual. I was just feeling not quite right, and since I had just had my heart cut open
Maybe we should get
a
this
week
checked
ago.
out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
so how long were you in the hospital when you were at Mayo?
Oh, super fast. Everyone there was like almost like impressed by the fact that I was out so quickly. I had the surgery on a Monday, and I was coming back home on Friday.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. That's what everybody here was pretty much saying. The surgeon did an amazing job, frankly. My heart looked super great. So good. The before and afters of my echocardiogram were like used in educational material to show perfect execution or whatever of this type of thing. They didn't use my name, obviously, or anything like that, but my cardiologist informed me of that after the fact, like a few years later.
So over the course of the morning,
it was getting bad, and even on the ride over there, it was to the point where I could barely speak clearly to my mom. So at this point, she's kind of driving pretty frantically to there. We're closer to it anyway. So once again, I'm rushed into the ER, and they already had a stretcher waiting for me. My mom had called 911 ahead of time or whatever on her cell phone as she was driving there to tell them that we're heading to Hackensack Hospital and whatever. So, they took me in right away. They got me all set up, I guess, while they were still figuring out what exactly was up. I remember I was just so weak, I couldn't even move, lifting my wrist ever so slightly felt like it was putting the same demand on my heart as sprinting was really it was almost too much to even keep my eyes open. Just opening and closing my eyes was that was like really, really weird. And scary too, but mostly just like, kind of sort of losing consciousness too at this point too. So what had happened was so much fluid had built up that it was, surrounding and like constricting my heart.
Is that what they call a tamponade?
I think so, actually. Yeah, I'm almost certain. To be quite honest,
I'm not a doctor.
I
I've just watched a lot of Grey's Anatomy.
There you go. Okay, well, perfect. Yeah, I think you're right about that. So yeah, basically, like, it was very restricted in its pumping ability, and it was like, it was just like a ton of force on my heart. So I passed out at one point, and then when I woke up, I was filled in, and what happened? They took me in for a quick emergency surgery. I was told that it's a fairly, at least the procedure itself is fairly routine, so it wasn't like that big of a deal. They said that it was like a pretty big amount of fluid, though. I think they said like a liter's worth of fluid almost, or close to it, which is like, yeah, that's what I said. I had a hard time comprehending how that was like even the case, but yeah, that's what they like drained from me or something like that. Wild. So yeah, and then but then I felt fine.
How much pain were you in after having your chest cut open?
Oh yeah, interesting point. It was a pretty painful, honestly. Yeah, for anyone who hasn't had open heart surgery, it puts a lot of strain on your ribs and back, having them pried open in such an unnatural way. And so, yeah, that was
not to mention, like, they sawed through
well,
bone there.
That's true, too. Yeah, good point. Yeah, they did kind of, cut through the sternum there. Which, by the way, I still have the metal. They're not actual metal, but some kind of alloy wires holding my sternum.
Oh, wow.
It's presumably grown back together by now, but they're still wrapped around me inside, which is what they used instead of a cast of. But yeah, the pain was pretty bad. Luckily, I was on pretty heavy pain medicine while in the hospital. And by the end of the week, honestly, like, the pain wasn't that bad. Like, I was sore, but it wasn't like excruciating anymore by that point after I got home. I think. Yeah.
I have a condition called costochondritis, which is just inflammation of that cartilage that holds your ribs to your sternum.
Oh, whoa.
Which can get really, really painful.
Yikes,
yeah. And I also, my dad had open heart surgery after his first heart attack, and so I remember seeing how much pain he was in, and then just like thinking, like, whenever my costochondritis flares up, I'm like, oh my god, I cannot imagine how painful having your chest cut open must be, because like that's painful enough as it is.
Yeah. Oh my god, that sounds pretty horrible.
It's one of many problems.
Well,
that I have. So it's kind of like, just this other thing that's, a problem.
Oh, gee.
My body is interesting.
Well, sounds like it.
Yeah.
I mean that, I don't know, and not in a mean way. I don't know what, I'm sorry. That
No,
just
it's
got
okay.
awkward. Okay.
It's okay. No, my body is very weird. It has a lot of stuff wrong with it.
Yeah, okay.
So you still take a beta blocker. You still have to do a Holter monitor, I guess, every few years. How many?
Yeah, my cardiologist would like it yearly. Sometimes it's a little less regular than that, but I still get the twice a year echocardiograms and about annual Holter and the beta blocker, and that's pretty much all that I'm getting as far as monitoring goes at the moment. A stress echo occasionally too. About one of those echoes per year is. I try to make it a stress echo, which is so much fun.
Yeah,
but
I don't like those.
Yeah, I know. Neither do I. Not one bit.
So, how much space does this take up in your life? How much time do you spend thinking about it? How much, does it interfere with your life, if at all?
Well, I gotta say, since the surgery, it's dramatically less than prior to the surgery. I do still, think about it somewhat regularly, just in kind of general terms, the fact that I have this condition, what it means for my future, or what whatever. Definitely something that I think it's affected. It's very definitely affected, I think, the person that I am today in a lot of ways. So
what are some of those ways?
So I think, well, as a child, because of a few reasons, all medical related, or physiologically related at least, I felt like, I was always a little bit like an outsider, sort of. Not only was I the only one that had a heart condition in elementary school, I was, and the only person who was walked in gym class all the time, not because of a broken foot or something. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, the whole death kid label, basically, after that happened, because I was in 3rd grade when that happened.
Wow.
When my sister died, and so I kind of feel like I was always a little on the shyer side, and kind of kept to myself a lot. And in addition to all that, and with my sister's passing too, I think in very surface level ways to start, got me thinking about death and my own mortality. I became aware of
my
it.
Favorite topic.
I know, right? Yeah, it is to me, honestly. But that was something I guess became aware of pretty early on, just exactly what that meant exactly, mm-hmm. Death. I got a pretty definite picture when my sister died, and then I'm trying to remember if was it right after. Wow, I actually mix up the timeline a little because it was crazy enough a year as it was, but within the same year that my sister died, my grandfather died also. My mom's dad died within that same kind of span of time too. So,
yikes.
So I so there's a lot of death things happening, almost deaths and actual deaths, and so I very much have dwelled a lot on that in my life, and I still do. I have a pretty, I guess, what seems to be fairly positive-ish outlook on it. Not in a for any real reason, not for any a religious reason or anything like that. Mostly that I've just kind of come to terms with the fact that
100% of us are gonna die.
Yeah, exactly. 100% of us are gonna die, and never gonna know if anything happens when you die. I personally am a little more of the belief that nothing too dramatic, really. And I don't know whether something is, whatever else, maybe in in my more spiritual moments, I like to the idea of just the natural energy that is present within the electro whatever energy that's running through the human body at any time. When you die, that energy just kind of goes into something else, or out into the universe, or wherever. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, that was a pretty comforting thing, honestly, to me when I first thought about that as maybe being something that happened. But nowadays I'm just it's gonna happen, and there's no sense really worrying about it. What death really means. I'm not personally, I wouldn't consider myself afraid of dying. I don't want to die, but I don't really, to me personally, I wouldn't care if I died. I don't want to get too and let me go a little further too.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
I am an extremely morbid person.
All right.
It really freaks a lot of people out. I went to a death conference last year. So,
wow. Oh, right on. Okay.
I'm in my element talking about death. You don't have to apologize to me.
Oh, well, sweet. All right, sounds good. Well, yeah, I just am very like okay with whatever, with it in general. I will say, if anything, I would feel, if there's any reason I would choose, if you gave me the choice right now between, okay, you could live, or okay, you could die, like just right now. The only reason, no, I shouldn't say it. The overwhelming reason why I would say live is frankly for like my family sake, not my own. Like I just feel like that would be like they've done like so much, been through so much to basically keep me alive, and so much has happened while I've been alive, and that I would feel a little bad. I'd feel really sad for them, frankly, because whether or not I care about myself, they definitely seem to, at least. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, death is always so much more about the people who are still alive than it is really about the person who died, or at least like we make it so much about us and not so much about that person.
Very true.
Because the people who are still alive have to deal with that loss, whereas the person who's dead is dead. Yeah.
Right.
So I always find that really interesting. And the fact that, like, we just completely ignore the fact that 100% of us are going to die is really weird to me.
Yeah.
Like, it's really bizarre. And that we're all just wandering around pretending it's not going to happen. And people don't want to talk about it either, because they think it's, like, going to bring it on, or it's contagious or something like that, which is so odd. But because we don't talk about it and because we pretend it's not going to happen, we wind up in these situations where where either, when a person dies or we lose someone, it doesn't quite go very well, like we wind up having all of these medical interventions that are maybe not totally necessary or a good idea, and just kind of like prolong a lot of really horrible suffering because we don't make it clear to our loved ones that, like, maybe that's not something that we want. And the same goes for, death care. Like, I do not want to be embalmed. Don't do it.
Oh, yeah, right?
Don't put me on display. Yeah. I don't need to be on display. Like, no, just because there's actually no reason to do it except to put people on display, which is just really creepy and weird.
Yeah.
Like, how is that not creepy and weird?
I know, right? I personally think so.
When my dad died, I walked into the room and it was like an open casket wake, and I just started laughing and like kind of also like crying at the same time hysterically, because he looked like he was just playing a practical joke on us. Like, he looked like he was just like pretending to be asleep in the coffin, which I found extremely disturbing and hilarious and weird. And like wasn't I don't know. Some people find it comforting to like be able to see the person and say goodbye. I didn't feel that way at all. I was just like, why is his body here? This is really weird.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
They also, and I don't want this to discourage anyone from making organ donations or tissue donations, because it is very important, but he was an organ donor, and they kind of messed up a little bit, and they thought that he was making a full body donation, and they kind of lost his body for a couple hours.
What the holy
so
shit. What?
My parents were living in Pennsylvania, and the hospital fucked up, and the organ donation people had taken his body and were halfway to Philadelphia before, I guess, the funeral home called and was like, oh, where's the body?
Oh my god, what?
And, I mean, again, this is where my, extremely morbid and dark and fucked up sense of humor comes in, because, my family was I thought my brother was going to murder somebody, and I was just like, but you guys, this is so funny. Trust me, this is going to be so funny in a couple years.
Right.
And then they had to like turn around and like, we got it back. It wasn't a big
Yeah,
deal.
right.
Like,
right.
whatever. It was just a really odd experience, though.
Well, yeah, I bet.
Yeah. And it turns out that funeral traditions are extremely regional, which I did not realize. So, like, we always lived in New Jersey, and then my parents moved to Pennsylvania. And so, like, wake traditions, and, like, here in New Jersey, they're usually, like, in the evening, I think. I don't
Yeah, for the wakes, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, on, like, certain days, and there were like all of these things that we kind of kept like running up against with the funeral director, who was just like, well, that's not how we do things here. We were just like, okay, that's weird. You know, because it's just the next state over. We didn't expect like traditions and policies to be all that different, but they were, which was really weird.
Was there like any one thing in particular that you remember or specific? Was it just like the timing thing, I guess?
Yeah.
Like, was it during the day or?
Yeah.
Oh, that is weird. Yeah.
And I think it was only on one day. Because, like, in New Jersey, there's usually, like, 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, right.
And there, they were like, no, we do one during the day and then during the evening on one day.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, it was weird. That's the thing that stands out in my mind.
Right, okay.
But I do remember hearing that phrase, like, well, that's just not how we do things here. Right. Or, like, repeatedly. Like, there were several instances where that came up, which was strange.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
That is... Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. But you work in assisted living, so you're kind of up against mortality every day.
That's right. Yes, it's true. And sure, I think that's definitely one of the challenges of working there. But I really kind of enjoy too, frankly, trying to make everyone's day-to-day life like as enjoyable as possible. Frankly, I get to interact directly with the residents there, and it's great. They come to me for any old reason. They don't, something happened to their phone, or they don't know why the what was it? I just had there was just a funny thing that happened. Actually, it was a little while ago. That's why it's foggy. But this is a resident. She was using the internet, one of the technologically savvy ones that we have.
So
and,
they're where you work. It's all seniors.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly right. Everyone at the moment is over. The youngest resident is in their late 60s, and then our oldest is 101.
Wow.
At the moment. Yeah.
I don't want to live that long.
I know, right? I'm pretty sure I don't either. Yeah.
That kind of freaks me out. I'm already hitting that stage of adulthood where I'm like, technology's confusing.
Right?
And I used to work in technology. How is this possible? Already I can't use Snapchat.
Oh my god. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But so there's just been funny things involving that, an email regarding a related issue. She didn't know. I'm not even going to bother going to the story right now because I'm going to mess it up. It's not fresh in my head, but just funny little things. And it's also kind of fun for me because it's always something really simple, and I'm like, oh, I can do that. I can, and just make their day so happy because of one simple little thing oh, your router isn't turned on, or that's literally press a button and magic.
You're a superhero.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing I've started doing I've worked at this same assisted living since I was a senior in high school.
Oh, wow.
Actually. So, February last month was my 11th year anniversary.
Holy shit.
Weirdly enough, yeah. So I started in the dining room, though, not always at the position that I am at, but as a server in the dining room, and really liked that, was really into the whole food business earlier in life. Then I moved into the kitchen, trained underneath our executive chef, who's actually pretty well trained himself. He's a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America. He was a head chef of country club for a few years, and anyway, so I got a good education under him. I'd always loved cooking as a hobby myself, growing up, and so it was cool, like learning to cook. It's so much different, and this is a big tangent we're going on now, but cooking for like 80 people versus cooking
for
a
yourself,
meal for yourself or like
yeah,
a handful. So like I learned a lot that way. One of the main important things I learned is that I don't want to be in the culinary industry.
Important lesson to learn before you spend all that money on culinary school.
Exactly. So, but it was great. I loved it. Like I loved the people that were working there. Some of them are still there. The executive chef is still there. Many of the other servers are still there, and a lot of them cooks too, dishwashers too. But I like working. Oh, the assisted living, right? So my current position, my title is community coordinator, and part of that is like on the marketing side, and some of that like doing networking meetings and more business sounding things. I do give tours of the residents, and I'm often the first person that people speak to when they're calling looking for information. So I help the families decide if this sounds like the right option for them, or if they need maybe something a little more or less, or things along those lines. And then so I am in some degree like responsible for getting people to move in, frankly. But luckily, I think we are on the smaller side and independently owned, and I have a lot of other freedom to do other things. My favorite project, and also something that's become like very time consuming, oftentimes stressful but very rewarding, is making the monthly newsletter for the community, for all the residents and the family members and the employees too. It goes out to everybody. And one of the sections I started doing about 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 even at this point, is interviewing a resident.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and just kind of finding out a little bit about their life, where they grew up, what they did, their family was like, the basic things like that, and that's been really, really fun.
What is there anything that you've gleaned from those interviews, or that you've learned that kind of sticks out to you?
Definitely seems that the people who have lived the longest, frankly, kind of sounds like maybe a little funny, but definitely seem to have been the ones that really did the most thing, or tried the most things. Obviously, not everybody has that ability to whatever, but they certainly they enjoyed what they did, or they tried out a bunch of different things, and maybe were able to travel, or they or for some other reason they just more directly had a really fulfilling family life or something like that, or really good friends, or
so staying stimulated.
Yeah, basically staying stimulated, and even if it's not in the most it doesn't have to be super excited, happy, fun things all the time, but challenges, I think show maybe have something to do with that too. And but yeah, I just, as you said it much more concisely, just basically staying stimulated, and I think it helps a more positive outlook, which in turn I think keeps people more active, which could maybe, if you're trying to live longer, that is, but it might not be for everybody. But yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. What's the range of ability of your residents?
It's pretty big, actually. We have a few who are mostly independent, and maybe they're just benefiting from the fact that we're doing all the cooking for them, all the meals, and then the basic housework is all taken care of, maintenance of the apartment and bed making, garbage collection, that whole thing.
Oh, that sounds nice.
So yeah, right.
I wouldn't mind that.
Honestly, I truly if I'm lucky enough to be able to, afford it and everything, like something dire doesn't happen and I suddenly have like no money at the end of my life, and I make it that long, I totally could see myself moving into an assisted living. I think they're only going to be like, more fun as our generation gets to that age too, so, but, whatever. They really feel like, I've visited a lot of them in my time, and I really think it's honestly like a pretty like cool idea, and a lot of people really benefit from it, and like there's like social hours every day, and like people are actually like really having fun with like make friends, and like fun stuff like still ends up happening for them, like on this what may more stereotypically sound like a time that like nothing really goes on in like one person's lifetime. But there's actually like all these new opportunities for new things, I guess.
That's cool.
Like, yeah.
Do you have any old people like fucking?
Oh man, well, I don't know for sure. I can neither confirm nor deny the fact if that's currently happening. This does bring to mind though a specific story from a few years back. So there was a resident, so a female resident, and she had a partner. She had dementia, so about moderate dementia, so kind of like in the middle, mild, moderate, severe. And just having that doesn't mean we can't be in assisted living. We do have like most assisted living do have a memory care area of the building where it's the same idea, same rooms and food and all that stuff, just a little more secure, so they can kind of move around on their own without worrying about leaving the property or things like that. But as long as you can get around with guidance and you're not in danger of harming yourself or others, a lot of residents with dementia can stay in the regular open assisted living area. So this woman was like that, and she had prior to moving in a male friend, and so that they'd go out sometimes, and then they'd come back, and he would stay the night sometimes, and I don't know necessarily what happened during the nights, but it's certainly possible. Some things were going on, but anyway, sometime into her time with us, as I mentioned, she had dementia. She started hanging out when the guy wouldn't come by. He'd maybe come by like a few times a week or something. So she became friendly with this other resident of ours, a male resident of ours, and so long story short, she would sometimes forget like that she was dating or seeing or whatever they considered it, this outside guy, and like he would come in and like see them like flirting together or like talking together at the table, or with like one guy's arm around her or whatever. And so this actually escalated one time. I think it was exactly that, like when he actually saw like this guy's arm around him, and there were some punches thrown.
Oh, wow.
Actually, blood was shed.
Wow.
It happened in the evening. I think it was after dinner. I was in the building at the time, although it happened upstairs. I was still downstairs. Our kitchen is downstairs where we are, and so yeah, I heard it all after the fact, but it was well documented, as everything has to be in the industry. So
lots of incident reports.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, that was a little funny thing there.
Interesting.
Yeah, everybody ended up being okay. That's fine. You can say funny, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, because our culture just kind of like discards old people, and like once you pass a certain age, even though we're trying to cure death, like,
right?
Once you pass a certain age, like the assumption is just that like you're not a person with a life anymore.
Like you've passed a certain worth too.
Yeah.
I think.
Which is really sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I know every family is different and whatever different dynamics and different other things, but like one of the things I think is kind of sad. Like there's been people I've heard of, not just in maybe in ours, but in other places too, that the resident or two that have family, but nobody like comes to visit, and it's not like these people that their families don't have the means to either. Frankly, like I think like they could, but for whatever reason, and I'm not judging, I'm just saying it's like something I have seen happen, and I don't know, it can sometimes feel a little sad to me, but those are just residents I tend to like kind of like getting to know all the more, honestly, or like at least trying to interact with. So many times they might not want. Sometimes they might not want to.
Sometimes they're just assholes.
Yeah, that's it. Well, there you go. So yeah. But,
interesting. Has your attitude about death changed or shifted at all in the time since you've been there? Or death, disability, illness, mortality, any of those things.
I think, I guess if it has, it's that it's, I think it has, and I think it's softened my feelings on it. I used to definitely, I would say absolutely definitely, not we want to like think about the idea of like growing that old, and like just assumed frankly that like why would anybody want to be like that old, frankly, like what, like they people are just at that age are so like maybe restricted in like a number of things, like diet or mobility or just like cognitive like function and all those things, but I've definitely, and since I've been here, realized that the stereotypes I think of the elderly specifically, and aren't always true. Definitely not true. They are stereotypes, and there's so many people who go on and still are active in their 90s, going out like for lunch to meet up with friends, and like maybe they use a walker or something like that, but like otherwise they're fine. And there are others who maybe don't remember what they did just a little while ago, but you never see them without like a huge smile on their face, like they're clearly like enjoying themselves and get like the biggest pleasure out of the smallest little things. I think I'm more okay with the fact I can see myself now older, as an older person, and I never used to be able to do that. And, I definitely don't know if I'll make it that long, and as I said earlier, I don't really care, frankly, whether I do or not. But if I did, I'd be okay with it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know it's not the end, and doesn't necessarily mean one thing or the other. It's, yeah.
I'm interested in, like, the cognitive stuff, cognitive decline, because I struggle enough with my brain as it is now, and it really freaks me out to think that, like, it could get a lot worse as I age.
Yeah, I feel ya. I tend to, I mean, I definitely do too, to be honest. Like, I feel like my memory is, well, different. Some days it's better than others, let's put it that way. But, and just very distracted and, whatever. The point is, like right now.
Yeah. No, I constantly forget what I'm talking about as I'm saying it, and I'm like, I get like halfway through a sentence, and I'm like, I don't know where I was going with that.
Right.
I don't know. I don't even know what I was talking about. I don't know what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Just disappears.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, Yeah, well, here's something I think that I've like thought about and kind of feel, if this makes any sense now, kind of like what you were saying about death, how the death, it really affects like the other members of the family and everything, and obviously it's like the individual is dead. To me, I've kind of like made the connection or analogy that well, again, it's not black or white, but a lot of the time, a lot of the residents that I've personally witnessed, when they, are experiencing a decline in cognitive function, it's like, it can be a little frustrating, like, at times to them, but otherwise, they're still just as able to enjoy things and, all that. When things are happening that are fun, they're still, having fun and that. As for the one, when it becomes more progressed, if the ones who don't even recognize, like, their own family members, to them, it's not like they're having a bad time, frankly.
Yeah, it's harder on the family members.
Yeah, that's really, I guess, my point, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And so for my own personal like thing like that, by the time I'm that age, presumably my parents won't be around anymore, and they're the main ones that I would worry about having to experience something like that. I don't have any siblings, so they wouldn't experience that. Whether or not I have a spouse or children, I guess, that's something that, I don't know for sure, but that would be, I guess, something I would figure out. But the point is, I, like, that's my point.
Well, that seems like a good place to end.
Thanks for listening to In Sickness and in Health. Find resources and more from us at insicknesspod.com and on social media at insicknesspod. Check out today's bonus episode where Alex answers my big healthcare question, and we talk all about my arrhythmias and my heart-shaped mystery box. And don't forget to be excellent to yourselves and each other.